Thank you for joining us here at Home Probe Academy. We're glad that you were able to make it. Our topic today is going to be mold, and it's mold and what we can do about it, but I kind of say mold in that four-letter word. So Jeff Luther, the owner of Home Probe, is going to be doing our talk today. So we're excited about that. So with that, Jeff, take it away.
Oh, thank you. Quite an introduction, right? The topic of mold. How do you make that exciting? And you really can't. There's no way around it. Unfortunately, we have to deal with it in our business, both your side as a realtor and on our side as the home inspector. And like most everything else, it's better to get in front of it than to deal with it on the back end. So we put this together for that exact reason, really just to sound a little foolish, but for a safe place to talk about it, right? Where we can ask the questions now, so we don't have to ask those questions in front of our clients, or when we're up against a tight time frame and have to go through those things without any type of benefit, or when we're under pressure. So there's lots of things around a home inspection that sometimes create, we'll call it, challenging environments for us, right? What I like to say, a home inspection is a delivery of technical information, sometimes in the form of a legal document, and it may or may not be in the presence of a hostile audience. Maybe sometimes a seller is there, or perhaps we have a buyer that feels like there's some contention between them and the seller, and we have no benefit of research or time, and we do it at a very low margin because it's not scalable. We don't have the economy of scale. So we'll add a few other things into the home inspection process. High anxiety, it can be emotional, and with emotion can sometimes come stress. Also, one of my favorites that we sometimes don't think about, but I think this is important when we're seeing the other side of the transaction. It's a reason to justify it's a bad decision, right? So we're seeing some of that now, of course, with the sales prices kind of going up and up and up and up and up every day. This reminds me of the way life was in 2009, 2010, when people had bought and then there was buyer's remorse. Sometimes we have mistrusts in a transaction, and that can be caused by skepticism, right? So a lot of things to create anxiety in a home inspection. Then, of course, there's the fun side. And unfortunately, that's not exactly what we're talking about today, but there is a fun side to all of this. I love my job, and I'm sure you guys do too. And also, I didn't mention this, but any questions you can chime in on the chat there and pop those questions in, and I'll do my best to keep looking back and answer those. So we have all these great characteristics about the home inspection process, and then we throw in that four-letter word, mold. It has an impact to our sensitive little ears, right? Things start to implode. And it's easy to say, hey, look, don't feel this way. It's kind of like, when you're going through a tough time and people say, don't worry about it. It's very easy when you don't have that emotional attachment. And what I say, it's like you're about to go on stage in front of 500 people, and you lean over to your spouse or your partner or significant other, and you say, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. And they look at you and they say, oh, Jeff, don't be nervous. Great. I didn't think about that. Thanks. You just fixed it. So it's easy to sit here and say, don't worry about it, or don't get too worked up over it. But the fact is we do. So we'll try and change our focus a little bit. There really are joys in the home inspection process. Sometimes it does make life difficult. We've got the house, of course, we get it under contract. We've done all of our due diligence, dotted our I's, crossed our T's. And sometimes we feel like we just want to pull our hair out. It can make life difficult for agents. Just like all of our communication, what I'm interested in doing today is kind of bridging that gap. How do we bridge that gap between what's going on at the inspection, and where we really need the transaction to go. So we want to bridge that gap. We'll start out just kind of what is mold. It's, we hear the words of toxic mold and black mold and all these different things. The color is not necessarily indicative of the severity. It's really the moisture around it, or the moisture that's causing the issue, causing the problem. So it's a microscopic organism. It is found just about everywhere. Inside homes, outside homes, inside buildings, outside of buildings. It's found on plants, on animals, on foods, organic materials, in your household. It's not necessarily a problem until and I say it, we'll talk more about that, until the spores land on a wet surface. So with that being said, what does it do? And it reminds me of that movie, The Wedding Crashers, when they're at Chaz's house and Mom, meatloaf. And he's talking about his mom. What does she do back there? Never know what she's doing. But it reminds me of that scene. So what does it do? It actually does serve a purpose. It looks bad. That's one of the things it does. It creates problems for us. That's another one of the things it does. But its purpose, but it does a lot of things, but its purpose is really to break down organic matter, to break down cellulose debris, leaves, sticks, wood. And it does that by, of course, attaching itself to the surface and for lack of a better term, eating the matter, the cellulose matter. And if you look at it, this is just a slice of bread. The spores are the actual problem. If you can see the stem or the stolon, and then the spores there at the top, that's where the problem comes in, because those spores get airborne. That's what we ingest or what we breathe in. That's where the allergic reaction comes from. If we're allergic, I am fortunate where I'm not allergic to it. My middle son, I have 3 boys. I used to say little boys, but now they're 12, 15, and 16. And so now you've learned something, right? But my middle one is hyper allergic to mold. So I can identify, but the spores are our actual problem. That's where all this revolves around. And it seems to be kind of lost in all of this. A good example is we just went through and did a thermal imaging scan for a friend of our family. Our company did the scan and trying to detect a moisture source, and it ended up being a roof leak, and it was going down in our wall cavity. No outward evidence of any type of leak, any moisture, only on the carpet in the closet. So we tracked it down to a roof leak that was actually 2 stories above. It was coming down a vent stack, hitting the floor, and then the water would run on the carpet. So she's concerned about mold behind the walls. It's like, well, if you want to cut the walls out and take all that out, you can, but you stop the water source and then you stop the mold. Also, you have to remember that it's the spores that are the problem. So if we can eliminate those from being airborne, then we eliminate the majority of the problem. It becomes at that point just a real ugly stain. Let's see. So there's been some case study about mold. It was carried out in Florida, Mississippi, Northern California. This was some research that we did during our certification for indoor air quality assessment. And the source was the trial behavior consultants. They were obviously trying to figure out how to pick, be transparent here. They were trying to figure out how to pick better juries for these mold cases. So the question was, how dangerous is mold? So they were asking just a group of from the public. And I remember that's our jury, right? Just a jury of our peers. So the question was, how dangerous? And you can see from the graph here, somewhat dangerous. Everybody agrees there's some danger level to mold. And then the next will be very dangerous, don't know. And then a very small percentage of the group polled said that it's not dangerous at all. And then they asked the question of how dangerous to your health is your exposure to mold. And that came back with, in essence, the same answers: somewhat dangerous, next being very dangerous, and then a few said not at all. So the public perception, do you know anyone that has experienced mold problems? And that was kind of telling, and very high percentage. No, they didn't know anyone that had experienced problems, obviously. So it's not as rampant in actuality as it is in theory when we discuss it or talk about it or it comes up, because those stories carry very far. And it's interesting, one of the very first mold cases, I forget the lady's name, but it came out of Dripping Springs, Arkansas. Kind of ironic that it's got that name that kind of associates with the moisture and the perception of mold. So the public perception is that it's pretty dangerous. The public fact is very few of us know someone that's had a significant problem as a result of mold. So how does it get in? How do molds get into the house? The fact is, if we did a mold test, if we swabbed, my forehead, my clothes, as I walk from the outside to the inside of a house, we would find mold anywhere on any of us, on our shoes, on our feet, on our clothing. It is everywhere. It gets in through openings, it gets in through doors, windows. It comes in through our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, what we call HVAC. It's carried in when we bring products in. It is just part of our ecosystem, part of our everyday environment. But having it here, this is it's not a great picture, but this is a stack of firewood, and you can see the mold, that white crystally looking stuff. That's mold right on the end of a piece of wood. So having it there is not any different than having it here. And what we're looking at now is the underside of a crawl space, and that is mold on the bottom of a floor joist right there. That's the framing inside of the crawl space. So that's no different. It's doing the same thing. It's trying to break down organic matter, break down cellulose debris. That's what it's doing here, trying to break that down, and then also trying to do the same thing here by consuming it, eating it, right? So let's talk a little bit about what mold needs. It has to have oxygen, and the graphic of the lungs there shows that, you know what, we do too. It has to have a temperature somewhere in the range of 40 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Anywhere in that range it survives, and actually higher than 100, and it should probably be changed, but it survives there. That's what it needs, and it actually thrives. It has to have a sufficient supply of moisture, at least 20% relative moisture, and then it has to have a food source. Wet cellulose materials, ceiling tiles, drywall, carpet, lumber. It needs the same stuff we do to survive, right? So which of these could we eliminate in a house? So, we have oxygen, can't really eliminate that and survive. Temperature between 40 and 100 degrees, can't really eliminate that and be comfortable. Sufficient supply of moisture, can't really eliminate that unless we stop cooking, stop bathing. Don't want that. So when you get moisture, just the water evaporating from the toilet, that's moisture. Watering our plants, cooking, taking a shower, perspiration, all of those things provide moisture into the house. But we can eliminate the food source, wet cellulose materials. We can't eliminate the actual cellulose, but we can eliminate that water. That's the key to the mold issue. Why we want to disclose it? I would say it's a national dilemma. That's kind of a sales pitch. I wouldn't personally, that's not the way that I view it, but the toothpaste is already out of the tube, right? We're not putting it back in. People know about it. People know it's written into contracts. It's written into lease agreements. People know that they get out of their lease in mold clauses or mold issues. It's hard to prove, right? It's hard to prove that someone's having an issue because of mold. Therefore, it's hard to disprove. So it's better just to kind of I'll phrase it like this, cut your losses and move on. Insurance companies, they're trying to take it off their policies or at least limit their coverage. Our E&O insurance, our E&O is a company, our inspection company, we have to have a separate rider for mold that we've purchased, and it's expensive. There are ongoing lawsuits all over the country. At any point in time, you can find a lawsuit in the public records. It's linked to health issues with some homeowners. I've seen it, 2020, 60 Minutes, Dateline, all those stories about mold in a home. I was having all these issues for years and years, didn't figure out what it was. It was faulty building. Particularly stucco homes suffer, at least that era with the synthetic stucco, that waterproof design, where moisture was getting trapped actually inside of the walls and had no way to get out. And it's scary. It's scary to talk about. Again, it's one of those things that we don't know enough about, and we know that it's dangerous, or can be at least. So it's sort of a national problem. Everybody knows about it. Some people are trying to make money from it, and fear-based sales is a lot of times easy sales, unfortunately. So we try to get in front of it, and that's what we're trying to do today. So hats off to you guys for being here for a not so exciting topic. How do we address it? It's sort of a delicate dance, right? A little goes a long way. Just a mention of the word mold can send a buyer into a frenzy. And just a small area in a house can do the same thing. Why didn't my inspector tell me about that? So we'll start kind of a very high level, how we address it. It's in our agreement that we have the client sign. We do not inspect for formaldehyde, lead, mold, asbestos, or any other environmental hazard. That's how it's categorized. If anyone in the home suffers from allergies or a heightened sensitivity to the quality of air, we try not to use that word mold. We strongly recommend that you consult a qualified environmental consultant who can test for toxic materials, mold, and allergens, and also do the remediation. And then in our report, this is how we report about it. This inspection does not include spores, fungus, mold, or mildew that might be present. You should note that whenever there's water damage or the accumulation of water noted anywhere in this report, there's a possibility that mold or mildew may be present unseen behind a wall, floor, or ceiling. If anyone in your home suffers from allergies, let me back up and know that this piece is important. We list it, there is a possibility that mold or mildew may be present unseen, because if it's seen, we're going to report it. We're going to report that visible potential of mold. Unseen behind a wall, floor, or ceiling. If anyone in your home suffers from allergies or heightened sensitivity to quality of air, we recommend that you consult a qualified environmental consultant who can test for toxic materials, mold, and allergens at an additional cost. These conditions can form in as little as 24 hours. It's important for clients to know that. It can form literally overnight. And that is important to note. When you send your kid to school with a sandwich for lunch, and then the next morning you're making a sandwich again out of that same loaf of bread, and it's moldy, you wonder about the day before, oh my gosh, did I send you to school yesterday with moldy bread? It forms overnight. It's critical to understand the complexities of mold and the reporting. It doesn't take long. That bread was fine yesterday. What happened? Just this small roof leak. So let's say you have a plumbing vent stack over a bedroom. This is obvious in the course of a home inspection. When they've closed and they're moving in, and this is formed, there's no way to say, oh my gosh, why didn't you see this? But this can form truly overnight. As I recall, this formed between the walkthrough and the move-in date, which could not have been 48 hours. But it can form and does form very fast. So how do we address it? Well, obviously you look for and you address water issues. That is critical. That's what we're looking for. The best medicine against mold is dealing with the water. The water is that food source. That's what it wants. So roof, obviously, HVAC issues. Like, for us, there are a couple of days out of the summer, It's 90 to 100 degrees. We have 100% humidity, and the AC system in homes is running constantly. So that creates a lot of condensation on the outside of the system. You see that installed in an attic, that condensation is dripping down on to insulation, OSB, framing, and that can cause issues as well. Foundation leaks, water coming into a crawl space, standing water down in a crawl space can actually cause issues with mold. It doesn't have to be direct water contact with cellulose debris, but all that humidity of that water evaporation getting onto the framing, that can cause mold issues as well. Water getting trapped between floor insulation and framing, which to me, that was one of the worst things we've done in our building code requirement, that underfloor areas be insulated. A lot of times we're just trapping that moisture between the framing and that insulation. It's a visual inspection. Obviously we're looking for it, right? And then smell is a telltale sign as well. We're doing these things anyway in the home inspection. We see it. Oftentimes people, they're calling to book an inspection. They've walked through the house and they say they want to get a mold test. We always want to know why. Why do you want to get an indoor air quality assessment? Well, because we see mold. Okay, well, you don't need to pay me to tell you what you already know. Don't pay for the mold test. Let's figure out that water source first. If we can do that through the home inspection, then we've got a pretty good idea of what we need to alleviate or what we need to address. Then we can move on from there. Let's eliminate the water issue first, then we'll worry about the mold issues. So should we get a test? My answer is no. Let's deal with the water first. Let's address the water issue. Then we need to remediate. A couple of things about remediation. EPA says 10 square feet or less. They put this on their actual documentations on their website and on their printed literature. The EPA says 10 square feet or less. The homeowners could do it themselves. It's easy. Use detergent. Do not use bleach. Bleach is dangerous. Sorry, not dangerous, dangerous. Bleach is dangerous. It may actually make the conditions worse. And there are a couple of things about bleach. It actually can cause the water to harden, and that way that water doesn't mix with the bleach and the bleach can't penetrate the actual mold. It may remove mold stains, but despite a clean surface, the internal roots are going to continue to grow in whatever that material is, whatever that cellulose material is. OSHA and EPA have specifically advised against the use of bleach for mold remediation. It says it now. Chlorine bleach is harmful. It's harmful to wood. It's harmful to other surfaces. Bleach can weaken and break down the wood fibers, ultimately create further structural problems. I think that's excessive to say, but that's what they have on their website. Bleach is dangerous. Mixed with ammonia, it creates mustard gas. And that was pretty damning in World War I. It's phosphine gas or mustard gas. Bleach is a toxic chemical. It's classified the same way we classify gasoline as far as toxic chemicals. Chlorine bleach releases dioxins. That's a known carcinogen. Bleach is corrosive. It's corrosive to the skin. You know, you get that oily feeling on your skin when you're messing with bleach. Apparently that's the top layer of skin that's breaking down. And overall, it's hazardous to your health. Bleach is not a good idea. Use detergent. My client is really sensitive to mold, and we want to make sure there isn't any at this house. That is a red flag for us. Sometimes we will just say, go ahead and get a test. Now, there's really no benefit for us to doing testing. It's not something that we do as an a la carte service just for preventative measures. But in an instance like this, your antenna should go up. That is a warning sign. And I would always recommend testing in that particular situation. Mold is here to stay. It survives in the same environment as we do. We can carry out preventive measure to reduce our risk, but humidity and water leaks, they're all related to most causes of the mold. And we're never going to eliminate them. It's going to be a part of what we do in our business. It's always going to be around. We can't get rid of it. We don't want to, actually, but it's important to get ahead of it. Inspecting the home for questionable or defective construction details. That's the key. Regularly maintain your sealants on the outside and inside, around your showers, your shower stalls, around shower doors, because that's where you get it on the underside, down in the crawl space, or actually between the levels of the home. Regularly monitoring all areas for evidence of any moisture stains, including attics, roof areas, maintaining rainwater control, how the water drains on the lot or on the property, maintaining any other form of water presence, sprinkler systems, sprinkler spraying on a house. That's things that we want to avoid. Any, of course, water leaks, water intrusion, anything like that. Those are the culprits here. Common sense is the best approach. I know that word sounds a little bit jaded or a little sophomoric, but common sense is the best approach here. The number one takeaway from this webinar, the best advice is it's much better to have and to not need a reputable remediation company than to need one and not have one. My experience in my 21 years of doing this is the wheels generally fall off when we get to this stage. It's the remediation piece. That's where the danger comes in. That's where the sales tactics come in and the fear-based selling comes in. Unfortunately, that I know it sounds a bit like I'm throwing knives, and I certainly don't mean to, but that has been my experience. It's dealing with this on the back end instead of on the front end. So we talked about the characteristics of a home inspection. It's very emotional. Reality is also a consideration. So the inspection process, the idea is to discover these issues here and try to eliminate them before we get bigger issues. The idea is to stay ahead of it on the front end. This, obviously, unless they're emptying that bucket out with some regularity, this is going to cause problems. And we try to eliminate these things on the front end. I can't imagine in any circumstance where someone going through and just looking at a home before they make a purchase or make an offer is going to find this issue. But a home inspection, of course, is always going to find this. The process works. And like we always tell folks in our company, trust the process. We have to let the process work. So let's talk. If anybody out there have any questions, I think I can see them in the chat here or in the Q&A. Anybody have anything that pops up, anything they want to ask or ask to the group? Comments as well?
We have a quiet group today.
We do, don't we?
This is such a great topic because mold is everywhere, like you said, and it comes up all the time. And it's that it freaks everybody out.
Yeah, it's a great topic is debatable. It's a tough topic and it's an important topic. I would rather be talking about GFCI receptacles and how they work, or how to reduce electricity to 120 volts.
That's exciting too.
The technical stuff is fun for me.
Yeah, well, I don't see anyone popping up, but thank you everyone for joining us. And as you know, we have these webinars every Wednesday from 12 to 12:30 with just a number of different topics. We're always adding to them. So now next Wednesday, we are not going to have a class, but then we're going to be picking it back up the following. And some of our upcoming topics are going to be sewer scoping, which is something new that we're bringing on that we're going to be doing. We're going to talk about thermal imaging and a number of other things. So check the schedule. We'd love to have you join us again. And it looks like we have a couple of questions that did pop in, Jeff.
Yeah, I've got a question here. What are some of the sales tactics that we should be wary of? That is a great question because I kind of glossed over that. When a mold remediation company is out to do an assessment and they're telling you about the health effects of mold, it's not relative. When they start telling you what mold is going to do to your body, it's not relevant to the issue at hand. The issue is getting rid of the mold. That is one of the real issues that I have. That is a big sales tactic for me. When they get, it's blowing the issue out of proportion. The mold remediation company is there to remediate the mold, not to give you a diagnosis or a physical prognosis of what's going to happen if you're exposed to the mold. For me, I can be exposed and it never in the past has never had an impact on me at all. Good question. I hope that helps.
We have two in the chat. Do you see those?
I do. Yeah. Let's see. How do you state your observations of possible mold in your reports? Just like that. How do you state your observations of possible mold in your reports? We do it just the same way. Although we're not here to look for mold, it's excluded specifically in our limitations. There is evidence to suggest you have the mold-like substance here, here, and here. And then we include photographs, and we go on to give them direction that they may want to consult with the environmental hygienist to get the issue resolved, and to also figure out the water issue. Now, we also will do that when we find water. If we find a water leak in a house or water leak in the crawl space, we do say, hey, if you don't fix this, issues can form in as little as 24 hours. So we would suggest that you address these quickly. Let's see, would you recommend an air purifier or humidifier? Now, a humidifier puts humidity into the home, perhaps a dehumidifier, but that's also what you get with running your air conditioning. It does dehumidify the house, pulls the humidity out of the air. And also, as a side note, so no, I would not recommend a humidifier. We fight really hard to get moisture out of the house. We don't want to put it back in. That's what a humidifier does. A dehumidifier might be acceptable. Now I'm going to go off kind of on a tangent here. So those of you that want to drop off, but be careful about a dehumidifier. You don't want to run that get the humidity too low, particularly a whole house full of hardwood floors. Sometimes you're pulling too much moisture out of the air in too short of a period of time. So be careful when you start running those, start slowly. Another thing that I wanted to say about dehumidifiers, shoot. It's my age. I forget basically everything. I don't even know how I'm going to get home. Darn it. Maybe it'll come back. Can you send the slides to this presentation? I do believe so.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Just you can send an email to me. It's wendy@home-probe.com. I'll be happy to do that for you.
Perfect. Oh, one thing I was going to say. So the question about air purifier and humidifier, for those of you out there like me, I like to run my fan on all the time because I'm constantly cycling air through my house. I have to change my filters more often, but I like that. I like getting all the dust and debris out of the house. During the summer, when you do that, when that fan is on instead of on auto, you pull humidity back into your home unknowingly. If the air conditioning is not running and your fan is on, you're pulling the humidity out from your condensate line, and you're also pulling some humidity from the outside air. So those of you that run your fan on all the time, you might consider turning that off and putting it on auto on our real high humid days during the warmer months. And during the winter, when it's on heat, it generally is not an issue because you don't have condensation anyway. So by all means, run it all you want. During the summer, think about that. If you're getting high humidity in your home, that could be the culprit.
That's great to know as I push buttons.
Yeah, I do that.
Home ownership.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is, I don't see any new ones. And I think that's it. Thank you, Jeff, so much. I always learn something new on these mold topics for sure. And I'm sure everybody else does. So thank you for joining us, everyone. And we'll see you back in 2 weeks.
All right. Our contact info is up there. Remember, we do home inspections also. So not only webinars.
Yeah, exactly. We'd love to work with everybody.
You.
Bye-bye.
Bye.